I'm very fortunate today to interview Jude Currivan. Jude is a PhD and she started a master in physics at Oxford, and she specialized in quantum physics and cosmology. Then she went through many years of finance and business. And finally, she got a PhD in archaeology and she explored ancient civilization. She wrote amazing books. One is called The Eighth Chakra, The Cosmic Hologram, it's fantastic. The 13th Step, The Wave, Cosmos, and numerous other books, The Story of Gaia. We are going to have a great open heart conversation. She's one of my favorite people. She's brilliant. She has knowledge. She has grace, lots of love. And I really want you to pay attention. What she says can really be a game changer. It will most probably shift your awareness, your world view, and we're going to have a great time. Welcome, Jude.
Thank you, Bruno. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Oh, me too. So I like to go straight to the core of the problem or the solution. And I would like you to start with information with a hyphen. And I know you consider information as the deeper nature of reality, beyond matter, energy, time, and space. And it informs our universe, or rather, it's not raw data. So can you explain a little bit what you mean by information? How come it's the deeper nature of reality?
I'll be delighted to. And this really is, as you know, Bruno, this is very much a leading edge, emergent understanding. But the books I've been writing show the evidence for it. And the evidence is coming forward now. You know, all scales of existence across many, many different fields of research. And as a scientist and as an explorer, as someone who's curious about the nature of reality, I really look to seeing from different perspectives. And when all those different perspectives are honing in on the same understanding, then that is progressively more compelling. So what I'm finding, but it's not just me, it's many scientists now, from cosmologists to evolutionary biologists to systems theorists, are finding that the appearance of our universe, as you mentioned, the energy, matter, space, time, is not fundamental, that these are what we call emergent phenomena that arise from deeper levels of causation and intelligence and intention. So the question, or one question, is, of course, how does that happen? And what we're discovering is when we analyze complex systems such as ecosystems, such as orbits of planets, such as galaxies, such as behaviors of human collectives, we find that underpinning them all are patterns. And these patterns are all relational, they're dynamic, and most fundamentally, they're made up of digitized information. In other words, just as our communications technologies use digitized information, the ones and zeros, to transform images, sounds, whatever, into long streams of digitized information, scoot it down a cable or bounce it off a satellite or do whatever with it, and then retransform that into that image, which is how we're communicating now. Our universe does the same, but our universe does this as a creation, essentially, of cosmic mind. So the way that cosmic mind creates our universe is meaningfully informing it as meaningful in hyphen formation that literally forms the entire manifestation of our world. So that information is the stuff of energy matter. It's the stuff, in a different way, of the appearance of space-time. But all of it enables our universe to exist and evolve as a conscious, living, evolutionary, and non-locally unified entity. So it's information that enables all of this gorgeous, wondrous world that we're here to explore and experience. That's how it is enabled to exist and to evolve.
So I know that recently they talk about the fact that information is really real and has a weight. You have a weight, physical weight for it. I remember also Landauer talking about changing information into heat. But how do you get the information into a plant, into the sun, into what the bridge to go from information
because
to
it isn't
matter?
The information that makes up the entirety of our universe is the fundamental stuff. So it expresses itself as energy and matter and space-time. But it is what you and me and plants and planets are made of. So if we think of energy matter, we know, is quantized, it's vibrational, but it's quantized and vibrational because when you get to the deeper understanding of it, that's the most effective, that's the optimum way in which consciousness, i.e. information, meaningful information, can be expressed in the appearance of what we call our universe. So it's not something like information getting into the sun or into a planet. It is the sun.
I don't like this word, panpsychism, when consciousness is fundamental in the universe and not created by the brain. And I'm going to send you a link for an interview I did, how the brain does not create consciousness. You could say information is consciousness, right?
It is exactly that. The information that makes up our universe is the infinite, eternal, cosmic mind, as Einstein called it. It is cosmic consciousness creating a universal consciousness which is individuated in self-aware consciousness such as ours. So our universe is an entirely sentient, living, conscious, unified entity, and yet its unity is not uniformity. Its unity is radical diversity from atoms upwards. Yeah.
So we don't create consciousness. We don't have a consciousness. We are fundamentally consciousness from.
So we are, and the whole world is consciousness.
So, when we say information is something very abstract because it's an old appreciation of these words. But when you say a pattern information, we have to think frequency, vibration, and at the quantum level, we have to see those fluctuation. That's what we have to see when we say information. There's an incarnation. But when you say information, it's so abstract. But in this context, we have to see this information is incarnate somewhere. And it's
always incarnate, and it's never abstract in that sense. The entirety of our universe meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves. So think of, I think that perhaps getting it more down to us, the pixelation of our technologies, of digitized technologies, okay, such as high definition images, high definition holograms, etc., is pixelated so that into millions and millions and millions of tiny little areas, each of which holds information, so that the whole is reflected in the many pixels, and each pixel essentially mirrors, reflects, is part of the whole. Our universe, our entire universe, the pixelation of its information is over 100 trillion times smaller than our best high definition hologram.
The Planck number.
Planck scale. Yeah,
the Planck scale. The quantification of information, which is like order of 44 or 35.
Well, it's minus 35 meters. So that pixelation is as small as to an atom as an atom is to the entire universe. But it's also pixelated in time. And of course, space-time are invariantly connected. We can't consider one without the other. But the Planck scale of time is an almost unimaginable 10 to the minus 44 seconds. So if you think of a film, you know, the old days, you're probably too young to remember this, but I remember when I went to the cinema and there was the sort of the reels of film, and each reel was comprised of many different frames, and each frame was static. But when you ran the frames together, they formed the story. And our universe, each pixel point in time at that Planck scale, again, adds more and more and more and more information. So it's telling the story of our universe as space expands and time flows forward. But instead of a few hundred frames per minute, our universe does, I'm going to get this wrong in terms of number, but it's about 1 billion trillion frames a second.
So the universe talks to us every 10 power 44 of a second.
Yeah.
The quantum physics says it's finite. The smallest value we can have is 10 power 44 a second, and in terms of space, 10 power 35 a meter.
Meters.
And that's
that is
information we cannot perceive. It's below the radar. But that's information that form us and on any level.
Yeah, that is the way, and that is the scale in which our universal reality comes into being.
And talking about information, let's talk about intention. A little tension in the sail of our consciousness, pushing us in one direction. How do you like that?
Absolutely.
So, you know, I mean, when we talk about, design and there's an intention, do we have more science showing us that there is a direction? All this information direct us into a specific direction, which I totally feel it. But I know science is not so much for having a design behind, I mean, everything is randomless and purposeless, and
no, but that's the old paradigm of science. Right. Well, to sort of go back a couple of steps, I mean, as you quite rightly say, the old paradigm of materialist separation of science, it really is about a meaningless and purposeless universe, where the whole process of evolution is driven by randomness, where somehow after a long time from the first moments of space-time, consciousness somehow arises from material brains and is limited to our material brains. That entire paradigm is being turned completely on its head. And the evidence now is showing that, first of all, our universe is innately conscious, sentient, and living in that regard. And that when it came into being 13.8 billion years ago, it wasn't in the apparent randomness and purposelessness of a Big Bang, which wasn't big and it wasn't a bang. It was minute, as we know, but it was also exquisitely fine-tuned.
It's fine-tuned.
And extraordinarily ordered. So it began life. Our universe began its evolutionary journey 13.8 billion years ago in that tiny beginning, where the laws of physics are informational instructions for how it can exist and evolve. And the point is that the way it was set up was so incredible that it essentially embodies an impulse to evolve from simplicity to complexity, with evolution, not just biological evolution, but the whole evolutionary progress from simplicity to complexity, from atom, hydrogen, to stars, to elements, to galaxies, to interstellar dust clouds, to planetary systems, to biological organisms, to us, meaningfully informed in its totality. So when we talk about, the Darwinian evolution of random mutations, we can go into more depth about this, but the science is really clear that it's categorically not random mutations that drive biological evolution.
No, random is, we know with chaos theory, there's often an order in chaos or what seems random. Random is something we didn't discover the law of yet. So probably we have to talk about something that's maybe it's a bit complex for people, but we probably all learned the laws of thermodynamics. Ludwig Boltzmann, it was named, the Austrian physicist. Yes. So the first law was energy cannot be created or destroyed in a closed system. And the second law, which is going to really turn our head upside down, is the entropy of the universe increases. And we all learn at school, I learned that entropy is a system, we describe a system that is going from order to disorder. And I loved, and randomness basically. And I love how you use the theory of information, right? From canon to totally change that concept. Yeah. Explain us that, because it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Bruno. When I was woken at 4 a.m. one morning when I was writing the Cosmic Hologram, or the Cosmic Hologram was writing it, I had a vision that actually brought everything together. It was quite an extraordinary experience and wonderful. So let's do this. There are essentially 3 laws of thermodynamics, although the first 2 laws are really the ones that are well known. Right. And as you say, the first law is that a system that is closed or contained, the energy of that system can change, but it can never be created or destroyed. So what I did is I took that first law, and first of all, I expanded a closed system to include our entire universe, because the evidence very much is now that our universe is a cosmic hologram, and it is contained, and it is finite. And of course, with the science of quantum physics, energy and matter are equivalent. So we can now say that the energy matter of our entire universe throughout its life cycle can't be created or destroyed, just changed. Then when we know from experiments and theoretical frames that information is expressed as energy, quantized energy matter, at least in one of its ways of expressing itself, then we can say that the information of our universe, expressed as energy matter throughout its whole life cycle, cannot be created or destroyed. That's the first law. And that really is a very simple description of quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Because quantum mechanics is just about energy matter.
Yeah, that's why they did those long equations to show that you cannot destroy information inside the black hole. It has to stay somewhere. And exactly. They spent a long time to find, where.
That was really a great insight, wasn't it? Because we then took that information understanding, which is thermodynamics expanded, from a black hole to the whole universe. So that's where we at with information expressed as energy matter. But there's a second law of thermodynamics. And when I was a little girl, something always came to me that the universe, as Einstein said, is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. Yeah. So why are the 2 laws of thermodynamics? Isn't one enough? Clearly not. And as you say, the second law of thermodynamics talks about this notion that Boltzmann came through with of entropy. And he described entropy, and it's spelled E-N-tropy, T-R-O-P-Y, as the energetic microstates of a system. And he also said in a closed system, so back to our universe being a closed contained system, that the entropy always increases through time. And we now know cosmologically that our universe began in its simplest state, so its lowest entropy. So as time's flowed forward and space has expanded, the entropy of our universe has always increased and continues to increase. So this gave everybody a real dilemma. Most people a real dilemma.
So science, we know that our life, we evolve, everything gets, there's so many aspects of life that doesn't decrease, we baby to an adult, you get more complexity. So we're like, what do you mean by
so how does this figure with that? And of course it does if you expand. First of all, if you get rid of this notion of this is about simplicity, this is about order to disorder. I'll give you an example of that. If you open a pack of cards, okay, you take the pack off and the cards are very ordered. You throw them up in the air. they land. They are not going to land in the same order that you threw them up. So you collect them all together and then you throw them up again. And they land in different ways.
On some level, it's disorder,
but it's not, because every time you do that, you're actually moving from a lower level of energetic states to ever more energetic states.
Every card are more information. The card were before just touching one card, but you can say that now they touch the floor, they're connected. So that's
Exactly. And if you then expand, as you suggest, from entropy as a measure of the energetic states of a system, to realize that if you show that that's informational, then entropy is expanded to entropy, which now quantum physicists are understanding is the informational content of a system, as you say.
So that's your revolution in awareness. Freedom is not to be in a box of cards. Freedom is to be free. That's what evolution is about.
Absolutely.
We're not getting into the box, all of us.
I love that.
That's your idea.
And of course, it increases over time. So what this now is showing us, that the informational content of our entire universe always increases through time. In the regard of entropy and entropy, then it's the process from simplicity to complexity. So you're adding meaningful information all the time, universally, which has enabled this entire evolutionary arc of our universe from its initial simplest state to ever greater levels of individuated complexity. But what guides that? And what guides it is universal intelligence that guides from atoms to molecules to stars to planets to plants to people. So when this old misunderstanding of order to disorder came about, as you quite rightly say, human beings, ecosystems, planetary systems are not that progress of order to disorder. And the reason is that they're always having that what's called open systems. So they're always open to the flow of information flowing through them. So they are coherent up to a point where at the end of a life cycle, the end of my life, your life, Gaia's life, when there's no more information to flow through, then that system decoheres into but it's still part of a universe which of itself continues to add entropy and add informational content throughout the whole of its life cycle. But this means we don't have to have this this thing about syntropy or negentropy, or this perception of somehow reversing entropy. It doesn't do that. When we see this with new eyes and understand that it's the meaningful informational content expressed in our entire universe in individuated open systems like ourselves and Gaia. So now we've got an understanding of an expansion of the two first laws of thermodynamics to two laws of infodynamics. The first one shows how our universe exists. Of itself, it has no notion of space and time, just energy and matter as informed. But the second law shows how our universe evolves from simplicity to complexity. The other thing is that, as cosmologists, we now know from the work from the Hubble, from the James Webb now, but before that, there are likely more planets in our galaxy than there are stars. So if you take that for every galaxy, for the hundreds of billions of galaxies and the hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, how many planets there are. And we know also, and there's some gorgeous images coming out of James Webb and Hubble before that, of interstellar dust clouds. And in recent years, we've discovered all the pre-biotic harbingers, the building blocks of biological life in those interstellar dust clouds. the forerunners of DNA and RNA and sugars and proteins, amino acids,
So
lipids.
those clouds is what's going to create a planet. We need those before planets. It's always
We need those before planets, exactly. But the point is, their environment isn't sufficiently able to nurture further complexity, but it's all there ready, including water, vast amounts of water. So when our planetary system was born, not just Gaia, our planetary home, as a water planet, but almost certainly Mars and Venus were early water planets. And it's looking likely that there's oceans of water beneath the ice crusts of some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. And a lot of that water was delivered from those interstellar dust clouds from which our planetary system collapsed when a nearby star went supernova, and the shock waves shocked a part of the interstellar dust cloud into our planetary system. So think of that happening all across the universe.
So you mean those clouds? Sorry, those clouds carry water. You have water carried little molecules.
They have vast amounts of ice. But the tiny little islets are not crystalline, because if they were crystalline, they would have destroyed the pre-biotic molecules. Instead, they act as little sponges and little sticky points for all the prebiotic building blocks to adhere to. So it's perfect. They're held in very coherent magnetic fields. They're bathed by the right amount of ultraviolet light to optimize them becoming to the edge of biological life, so that when planetary systems form, and the sort of the ice and the molecules and all the rest of it, they come in on asteroids, on comets, as well as the bodies of the planets themselves, and therefore they're there early to enable that next level of planetary complexity to go forward, and for the birthing of initially a single-celled biological organisms, and then on and on and on to us with 37 trillion cells in the community that we call our bodies.
Amazing. Yeah, I assume the universe loves to do that. So let's introduce the notion of love in that intent of in that information.
Well, for me, what this is all about, this emergent cosmology of a conscious, living, evolving, non-locally unified universe, it is the science of love, because our universe is innately not just interrelated and interconnected and interdependent, but literally exists and exists to evolve as a unified, unitive consciousness. And so for me, the journey of simplicity to complexity is how that consciousness, that universal consciousness, is then embodied microcosmically in microcosmic co-creators who have evolved to the point that we are evolving to, of waking up to A, realize we're inseparable, and B, to waking up to the understanding and the experiencing and the embodying that we are our universe's microcosmic co-creators. And therefore we can wake up and evolve consciously to become the universe's and Gaia's co-evolutionary partners. And that's me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. When the one turn into two, and each of them know that they are supporting each other, co-creator. I mean, you need two to have love, right? You need this. It's an attraction with two things. So the one creating two, we have the possibility for love there. When you're aware of that, just only love can manifest there. It's a natural manifestation, yeah, of knowing we're connected, codependent, co-creator, and it's beautiful. And if I remember, you started to very, very early having very mystical experience when you were 4 years old, right? And that's the wholeness of including left brain, right brain, science, mystic and esotericism. So do you want to talk to us a bit how you started? And can be free, you know, it's just we go into full subjectivity and it's beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think the loveliness of that is that it isn't about trying to impose those experiences on anybody else. You know, I share them because they're my experiences. This is the way I live my life. And, you know, it's an invite to anyone to, you know, want to take their own adventure of discovery and exploration. And I did when I was 4 years old. I had my first experience of what might have, had I been older, I might have been told, you know, either they were imaginary or, you know, this is what they are. And instead of which I just experienced them. I experienced a discarnate light coming on into my room. I heard clairaudiently a voice. It was such an inviting voice, such a loving voice, such a welcoming voice. And, you know, at 4 years old, it's not a mystic experience at all. It's perfectly natural. Perfectly natural. So from that time, I mean, my whole journey has been, and my whole life has been one of curious exploration about the ever deeper, you know, understanding of the nature of reality itself and what I've experienced and discovered. And, you know, many ways, you know, because both the Cosmic Hologram, as you know, Bruno, and the Story of Gaia are filled with the evidence that this is not subjective, that this is an objective perception as much as we can have with our current tools, our current ways of scientific exploration, of, you know, of the wholeness of all that is. That's what the evidence is showing us. And it's converging with universal wisdom teachings, whether they be indigenous and experiential, whether they be esoteric and insightful in other ways. But nonetheless, there is this incredible confluence of almost the whole of our story as human beings to this point, to a moment where, you know, if we don't wake up to remember we're inseparable, we may not have much more time as a species on our planet. And yet, what's so wonderful for me is we are waking up, and we have now the evidence that's ever more compelling to give us, you know, a friend of mine, Joni Carley, says, and has worked at the United Nations for many years, and we're now actually working with a whole group of NGOs to have the UN adopt what's called a unitive thematic cluster. In other words, a way of approaching everything they do from this unitive awareness. And she talks of unity not being an aspiration, but our existential reality. This is what the evidence is showing, and this is what the book's sharing, and this is what's enabling us now to draft what we're calling a unitive narrative to underpin and frame the possibility for transformational change based on this understanding.
Yeah, this was talked about thousands of years ago, but you had the mind to go into Oxford and to try to connect that with science and show a path to be able to unite quantum physics, relativity, and all this old knowledge and everything. I mean, you include absolutely every aspect of life there, from emotion. You can touch a therapist, you can touch a surgeon, yes. You can touch a physicist, you can touch a gardener working with Earth every day with Gaia, and you can. And that's the beauty of this aspect. Is going to touch. It is touching everybody, and you find a path of unity beyond the diversity, and you honor all the diversity and bring it together into this unified field, which is loving information, spreading and evolving. So now, because everything is finite, this evolution, this transformation has to have an end too. So that means passing a different dimension, or how do we see the end of this evolutionary process?
I think that's the loveliness of evolution. You don't know the destination when you're on the journey.
Just trust the process.
I love that. Absolutely. And show up and get out of the way, you know, because the universal evolutionary impulse is flowing through us. So really, it's an invitation to attune with it, align with it, link up and lift up together from this deep existential reality of unity in diversity. And that, in the whole 4.5 billion years of Gaia's story, as part of the 13.8 billion years of the universal story, the simplicity to complexity emergence of biological organisms has involved physical transformations. There's been an evolutionary arc where you get to a point of complexity where there's a real trade-off between resilience and flexibility, and therefore the ability to further evolve into more complex bodily forms.
Transform.
Absolutely. So for us now, we're here, we're humans, we have our human bodies. So the only way, in a sense, we can evolve is evolve our consciousness, evolve our awareness. What that might mean, though, in terms of, the future and further bodily changes, I don't know. But what I do feel very strongly is that we are at a point which is existentially unsustainable. And if we can't consciously evolve, Gaia's going to go on, I think. I know. She has done for 4.5 billion years, adamantly, through good times and challenging times, through catastrophic times and easy times. Her evolutionary impulse, I think, will continue. So it's up to us. What do we choose? Because this really is our moment of choice, it seems to me. We also found that, the pace of star formation was really boosted about 9 billion years ago, and then has been really reducing ever since. So there's only, an estimate was done by Dennis Sober, I think, a few years ago, saying that there's only about 5% of the available hydrogen to make new stars than there was in the beginning. So not only is, we've got this adiabatic process of temperature falling, entropy rising, all the rest of it, but we also have this progressive reduction.
So we're in senescence. We are like, for human life, we're like 60 years old or something like that.
Yeah, that's the way I'm looking at it.
So there's a direction of evolution, and we go in and out of what we should follow. I mean, you can decide to go against evolution. You can decide. So this whole thing is it's like an attractor, right? You have this direction.
Yeah, absolutely,
the right direction, and we go in and out, and we agree, synchronize or not synchronize, harmonize with that unity consciousness.
Absolutely.
And that's our choice, right? To harmonize with the unity consciousness or not. Try to feel the truth and follow the truth, whatever it is, but what we feel it is, and or not, right? So, yes. So what we can say practically for people that want to do the best they can. People have, a lot of people have goodwill and try to help, and being aware of the unified field of, opening the heart to love, to unity, accepting diversity. How would you formulate that for practical application of this knowledge, basically?
It's eminently practical. It is. If it wasn't practical, for me, it would be pointless. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't able to be experienced and embodied. And I guess the other thing is that, as human beings, we're quite good at complicating things that don't really need to be complicated. And we say, oh, it's not simple. It's not simple. And I say, love is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. And therefore, for us to, one of the things you're saying earlier about the thousands of years have come to this, that there is one principle that is a golden thread through all traditions. And that's the principle we call the golden rule, to treat others. And my dear friend, Kim Pullman, and her colleagues at an organization called Reboot the Future, that is their whole ethos, it's their mission, whatever, but they add, and our planetary home. So to treat each other and our planetary home as we would wish to be treated. That's it. That's the beginning, that's the middle, that's the end. If we were to do that, in every choice we make, in every thought we have, in every action we undertake, however small, that would transform our world overnight. And yet, so our collective dis-ease has been one of the illusion of separation. So as we wake up to this existential reality that we're inseparable, there's an old personal development rule: act until it is, act as if. But we now have the compelling evidence that reality is unity and diversity. But even if you're not quite there yet, to absolutely feel it in your body, act as if, and live the golden rule.
Now, living that in a world that is dysfunctional, living that with your boss that is in his fractioned reality. When you lost the track, then we are desperate because we feel like, oh, people around me are not in that unity consciousness.
But you spoke earlier about an attractor. What underlies all of the appearance, whether it's an ecosystem or the internet, for example, or collective human behaviors or planetary orbits, whatever, are what are called attractors. And they are the relational dynamic patterns of information that then express themselves in the appearance of our world. So for us as a collective human consciousness, we are all of us part of an attractor basin, a very complex attractor basin of our collective awareness. So what happens is, if there's a collective awareness or an attractor basin that is stable, it just continues, whether it's a weather system, an ecosystem, collective human behaviors. But when there are other factors that destabilize that attractor, then it's rather like filling a basin with water and spinning it faster and faster. And the water at the beginning can hold in the basin, but eventually it starts to tip over and go everywhere. What is happening now, it seems to me, in our collective human consciousness, is that we are part of an unstable attractor of consciousness, of awareness. But if evolutionarily, then throughout the whole story of Gaia, the whole story of our universe, a more complex attractor begins to form in these underlying causative realms.
To reorganize.
Exactly. So the more of us that are aware, are awakening to this level of awareness, are beginning to crystallize, as it were, a higher vibrational attractor. And then the old falls away, and it can fall away gently or it can fall away catastrophically if there's sufficient, sufficient embodiment, as it were, or potentizing of that higher vibrational level of consciousness, an attractor that becomes the appearance of the world.
Yeah. So, but we could even say there's a mega attractor behind it, right? The primary intention of the universe, that's a mega attractor. And within
that's the biggest attractor. Our universe is attractor. Absolutely.
So have you tried to really, maybe in meditation or visualization, try to connect with that, synchronize with that very complex and very simple at the same time, harmonize with that attractor? That's something.
Yeah, I do that every day. I do that and really, as I said earlier, Bruno, to show up and get out of the way, to attune and align with that evolutionary purpose, to serve it, which is essentially serving universal love, is serving universal consciousness and that impulse to evolve. And I do that, because I love our universe. I truly love our universe. I love our planetary home. I love our solar family. I love because I don't feel separate from all of that, all of this, all of who we are.
So it's funny because basically this is one option. The other option is separation that brings you into fear, then eventually hopelessness and depression and it's right there. It's right there for us to feel, but we describe such a dysfunctional story, purposeless, randomless universe, that we go into that place, refusing the love that's given to us.
And when we do wake up, literally we've dismembered our collective psyche. So part of the remembering and the consciousness of our evolution is releasing, is acknowledging and healing together that trauma that comes with the illusion of separation. You know, in your work, you know, healing and releasing that goes hand in hand with someone's ability to move forward, to live a life of whole being, you know, to have joy and love and gratitude in their lives. But, you know, and I'm not speaking in any way of many people in our human family who have been incredibly disadvantaged through the illusion of separation and the conflicts and the injustices and the inequalities that are natural coming from that perspective. But as we wake up to remember our unity and diversity, then instead of conflict being a natural outcome, peace is a natural outcome. Instead of fear being a natural outcome, love's a natural outcome.
I like your point of view when you took it from a transpersonal, you know, healing, globing, you know, with the whole wisdom of the universe. And if you have a few minutes, I'd like you to, I know you're writing a book. What's the name of the new book again?
It may be, I mean, you say new book, the Story of Gaia is only available from tomorrow in the US. So and from December in Europe. So this book is very new. But the one after that, which is the third of a trilogy that I've been guided and hopefully will have the privilege of coming through me, is Many Voices, One Heart.
So could you spend a few minutes telling us, for therapists, one-on-one, you know, how you approach someone coming with the dysfunction on any level? How do you approach that with your, I know you did some treatment for a few years.
Did, yeah. And I still use these sort of modalities, but on a planetary scale rather than an individual person scale. First of all, this was guided. This wasn't a training. This wasn't, you know, anything that I was aware of or indeed was there before this. But it began really from a realization that you can never solve a problem from the same awareness that created it. This is Einstein again. But that's true whether it's trying to sort out a community problem or trying to resolve a dis-ease of one's imbalances, whether they be emotional, psycho-spiritual, or even physical, because we now know that the entirety of our consciousness is fundamentally interrelated. So although we might fall over and break our leg and you know, whatever that might be about, often our chronic physical diseases emerge from unhealed aspects of mental and emotional, psychospiritual imbalances. So on that basis of not being able to heal such chronic imbalances and diseases from the same level of awareness that caused them, what I was guided to do is to expand, first of all, for myself, to expand my awareness as part of my ongoing journey from my personal sense of self, which in Eastern traditions is often based on a sevenfold chakra system, to a transpersonal sense of self. And in doing so, I discovered levels of awareness that associated themselves simply with the concept of an 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th chakra. And with each higher level of transpersonal expansion, I found myself able to attune with universal consciousness at those levels. And the 8th chakra was a bridge, is a bridge, energetically, informationally, consciously, between our personal and our transpersonal selves. And I call it the universal heart. And when I was doing this type of work one-on-one, I would work with folks in a guided way, a guided visualization way of inviting them to raise their awareness from their personal sense of self and in the universal heart to enter into this expanded transpersonal sense of self. And what I found and what they found doing that is that, first of all, they were able to sort of, if you like, not, it's still relational, but take away that personal identification with their trauma, which they'd been running round and running round and running round. And rather like journeying from a valley, a wooded valley, to the top of a hill, they were able to see so much more about what that trauma was about and how it really began. So I found a way of guiding them for them to follow that trauma back without identification, without judgment, to a seed
without
point.
being a victim, without
being a victim, without judging, without any of that, because we're at this transpersonal level of awareness in the universal heart of non-judgmental, unconditional love, back to a seed point. And that seed point, usually early in life, in this life, may not have been of itself traumatic. Often it was. But to understand it without needing to go into the trauma of it, without judging it, but being able to see it. And again, for them to know with their own higher level understanding how to resolve it, how to release it. And that often was accompanied by inviting parents or others who had been part of that seed point into their level of awareness. And again, having a dialogue without judgment. And it's an incredible process of release and renewal. And what I also found is that sort of chronic traumas, and there were 5 what I call archetypal traumas of abandonment, abuse, betrayal, denial, and rejection, that also seem to embody in this life in one way or another if they were unresolved traumas from other lives. So I found a way of inviting people to release from that seed point in this life, identify if there are any other unresolved resonant traumas, but just one, just going back to the ultimate seed point. So not going back like an onion, 2 points.
As far as you can go, the origin, the very first time.
Ultimate origin, absolutely, and the re-triggering in this life, and then to release it, but to do so at that level of non-judgmental wisdom and love.
So you have to have people that can raise to the higher level of frequency. So imagine somebody really traumatized, that could be difficult to raise out of the initial trauma, human reaction. And the other thing is you have people that don't want to really heal.
And that's exactly right. You have folks who are in denial, don't even acknowledge it and don't want to move any further, or feel incapable. I would say, to be honest with you, that if somebody is willing, then almost always they can release it. It's if they're either in denial or, are acknowledging it and just say, I don't forgive. I don't want to move beyond this. That until that is able to be moved on, in my experience, it's almost impossible. But once they
sometimes it's unconscious. They are in your office. They really tell you they want to heal, but you have unconscious sabotage and things like that
absolutely
stop them at every corner.
You see, the thing with this methodology, the thing with moving into the universal heart and the transpersonal awareness, and it's they that raise that. I sort of help them because the vibrational ways that I can.
You are consciousness.
Bless you. But yeah, they it's them, and that's very empowering. And often it's that sense of disempowerment that they've told themselves or they've been told or whatever that holds them in that, that stasis. But by helping them to do that, it really is extraordinary. And I sometimes quote something that I was told many years ago when I was doing my PhD in archaeology. I was in this gorgeous field with a blue sky above me. And the words came, in the commonality of our humanity, we're all ordinary. we're all ordinary. In the commonality of our divinity, we're all extraordinary. So it's helping folks to begin to remember that we're all divine and we're all human.
So you can imagine that it's a natural process, it's a holographic process. This information is holding a very high energy, and we don't pay attention to it.
Yes.
Like, you remind them of their higher frequency, but it's happening all the time around us. We have this high frequency, we don't pay attention to, but there's also a high energy behind all this that's always there, sustain us, nurture us, as if we take the time to synchronize with it, harmonize with it, resonate with it.
Exactly. And it's available to every single one of us. By incarnating as a microcosmic co-creator with meaning and purpose of our universe soul's evolutionary consciousness and impulse. This is who we are innately.
Beautiful, Jude. I know you are busy, very busy today. I'm not going to take all your time. It was such a gift, an honor for me to be able to connect with you on that level. We'll stay connected forever now. We've always been connected. Now we're aware of it.
Exactly, Bruno. Quite right.
Thanks.
Thank
Hope
you.
you're going to write a lot of new books and continue to revolutionize our awareness for a long, long time.
Thank you. And I'd love to invite anyone who reads The Story of Gaia, because however they feel about their relationship with our planetary home at the beginning of the book, I hope that by the end of reading the book, they literally do remember that we're all Gaians.
Gaians. Thank you, Jude. Blessings. Yes.
Thank you so much. Lots of love. And I look forward to being together soon.